Beth is here.
Okay. I know that Vivian is coming. She's coming from something else and will probably stay off camera for at least the first few minutes while she's wrapping something. She tells me she will be multitasking her listening. Right, and we have Marcus coming from another event.
Yeah, or I'm struggling. Who's my resident expert on Zoom?
It may not be any of us.
I was going to say, sorry, can't help you with that one.
What are you looking to do, Kate?
I can't seem to promote Nicole and Beth. I'll figure it out.
All right, well, I could go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. Today is February 28th. This is a meeting of Newari, and we are meeting remotely by Zoom under the governor's pandemic orders, which do permit for all of us to meet together as long as we can hear each other at the same time, and as long as the public has the option to be viewing the proceedings, which is the case. So with that, we can proceed. I know that Kate, I was hoping actually that we could have Nicole and Beth speak first. I said to Kate, right as people were joining, Toyin called me this afternoon and said that he really needs to take a break for a couple of months, that he has just got a ton going on and is feeling a little bit burned out. So he is planning to stay on our distribution list and to watch what we're doing. So he's not leaving us, but I will check back in with him within another couple of months. So anybody wants to send him a note of some Newari love, please go ahead and do that. So we will miss his voice for hopefully just a little while. Okay.
So I'm sorry, folks, that they don't usually let me run these, but I allowed them to talk. Beth and Nicole, can you hear us?
I can hear you. It's Beth, and Nicole was running from.
She's here.
I can't see you, Nicole. That's kind of weird.
I'm really sorry. It must be something in the setup of this webinar. I hope we can keep going, Marianne. I'm sorry about that.
No
Okay.
worries.
I'll keep looking.
So Kate is going to continue to look for the settings, but what I have asked Beth and Nicole is actually if we can start with the two of you, knowing that you are doing multiple meetings tonight. And we just wanted to catch up as a group with you as you're in your week of launching the Needham Resilience Network. So congratulations to you for getting ready for the launch. And I know things are sort of down to the short strokes, but we just wanted to sort of connect and figure out where we are together, the ways in which we can be supportive, and understand what your first steps are going to be with the network.
Great.
Fantastic.
Do you think it would be helpful to hear an introduction? Do you want to hear about us a little bit and about the network and where we are, and then open up to questions? Or do you have specific questions that you want to start with?
I think what we'd like to do would be to start with your first proposal. If you want to give brief about the two of you and then about the network. And then I think some of who you've reached out to, who you're including in it, that kind of thing.
Great.
Because you worked hard to build a broad group, and I appreciate the efforts for that.
Thank you, Marianne. And first of all, thanks to all of you. We are and have been watching the work of Newari, of course, for more than a year. And it's been amazing to see you reflect and align and work through concepts and relationships and understandings together. It's really important work, and we're lucky that we have a town that's doing it. So all of that said, you probably still don't know who I am. My name is Nicole Argo, and I am a mother to two elementary age kids here in Needham. I've lived here for almost 4 years now. And I am a social psychologist by training. So my My research and today my work deals with intergroup dynamics, and that touches upon everything from conflict resolution to dialogue to DEI efforts and things like that. Beth, you're up.
Okay. So I'm Beth Peinels, and I also am very grateful to the work that you're doing. It almost feels in a way like Nuari is almost like a prelude to the network in a sense. And we've been very much looking forward to interfacing with you all and understanding how we can be synchronized in the right way, which is in fact one of the goals of the network. I am a psychologist by training. I have a clinical psych practice both in Brookline and Needham. But the other piece of my work is around wellness and equity. I do consultation mostly with youth, but also the adults that support them in many ways, whether it's a school with faculty administration or youth organizations with people running those organizations. Have also done some consultation with primary care doctors and family business over the years. But my work has morphed from a kind of very pure wellness, emotional wellness focus to identity, and equity work, because if I see you, I need to know who you are and want to understand you. And this is going to morph us into the network and where we're starting. So Nicole, should I just keep rolling in? You want to add anything at this point, or shall we roll? You want to roll into the background first and then we'll.
Sure.
Actually, can I interrupt you two for a second? So I just sent you my link, which is a panelist link.
Okay.
So you two should have that in your email. If
Yeah.
you can click on that, we think you should be able to come back in, and so we'll actually be able to see you, which I think will be better for our
It'd be
conversation.
nice, we can see each other too.
Yes,
That'd be great.
okay.
Okay.
So come on back,
Coming.
hopefully. Sorry about this, everybody. Yay, there's Beth. And here comes Nicole. They are Beth and Nicole, and not all three Mary Anns, but I'm sure you all already know that. And Kate will rename them as they're talking, but now carry on. Thank you.
Okay, great. So for the moment, I'm the Mary Ann Cooley at the leftmost point of my screen, also known as Nicole. So I'll start then with an overview. And I know that many of you are familiar with the idea of the Resilience Network, but maybe not all. So for now, we're calling it the Needham Resilience Network. But the network, when it meets, this will be one of its first tasks, is to decide if it wants, you know, a somewhat more concrete or sexier name, or if we want to stick with this. But I guess the best place to start is what led to this. And as many of you will remember, calls for a response apparatus, like rapid response when identity-based harm or other things occurred in town. They've been around for a while. And the idea was, how could we make collective responses that involved the town, but also all these other civic groups, more efficient and more effective? And the idea for these responses was that they would reinstantiate positive norms and help to support affected parties when things occurred. So these calls were led by the Human Rights Committee, the Needham Diversity Initiative, and key players from those groups over, I've heard, as long as a decade. But there was a resurgence in them over the last year and a half. And about a year ago, we had a workshop here in town, which included 51 participants, some of whom are here in this call. And what we realized during that workshop was that there was immense interest in building this apparatus, and also that recent years have left their mark on not just the country, but also the town. So we've been hearing, you know, there and then since then, reports of significant declines in mental health for youth and adults. The workshop specifically revealed some mistrust between civic groups in the town and the police. And then we know that Needham has seen an increase in the level of reported hate incidents, up 350% compared to 5 years before, which is, you know, on par with what we're seeing across the nation. But amidst this time of stress, we've also known that Needham residents and the town have stepped up. right? And we've seen support initiatives, initiatives like Nuari proliferating. But just like across the nation, our community here also struggles with a de facto social segregation, which was probably made worse by COVID, right? And this is where people are often not exposed to individuals who think differently than they do or who have different lived experiences, whether that be due to race, class, partisan status, whatever it is. So there's consensus in the research on this, that today we just know fewer people who are different than us than once we did. If you don't know your neighbor, it's harder to understand them or to work together. Indeed, some of our local initiatives have expressed feeling like they operate in silos and at times lack accurate information about what other initiatives in town. And occasionally they're even driven by an animus for other groups in ways that have obstructed conversation. So we've sort of amassed through that workshop and in conversation since, we've amassed this, this understanding that as an incredible town filled with well-intentioned and beautiful people, there is this sense of like, how do I talk to everybody? How do I get to know everybody? How do we figure out where we want to go next? How do we respond to these challenges? And amidst that, Beth and I started really talking about what this resilience network could do. Because of my work, my day job, I've come across a lot of international literature on how places that are undergoing stress, whether there's climate disaster or other disasters, economic breakdowns, political violence, which places are most resilient, right? Who does best? And one thing we know in our nation, experts are saying for the next 2 decades at least, we're going to be facing challenges that can't be conquered. They'll have to be weathered or adapted, climate stressors or increasing weather-related disasters, future pandemics, cyber attacks, and energy hotspots, you name it. So as a town, we're probably going to continue to face these stressors. And what can we do? So that literature talks about how do you best structure a team of responders or people who are working together to prevent future stressors. And one of the most important things to do is to intentionally bridge silos, to create a table where you have all major stakeholders, whether they be official or unofficial, including all identity groups at that table. So to intentionally bridge local silos, to promote cross-group understanding and social cohesion, we have developed this Needham Resilience Network idea, and its goals are to highlight and come together around our shared local interests and values. And I don't know, maybe some people ask, do we actually have those? And of course, the answer is, of course we do, because no matter who we are or what we consider our key identities, like for me, I'm a mom, I'm a scientist, I'm a dog lover, I'm a basketball player, whatever. But one thing I know I share with all of you is that we are Needhamites. And we all care about having great schools and safe and supportive, strong community, a place that promotes well-being and a culture of welcoming, inclusion, and equity for all. I know that if your kids do well, my kids will do well, right? We're in this together. So this piece of highlighting and coming together around our shared local interests and values is a real priority for this network. And then creating a space within that to grow genuine relationships between individuals with diverse lived experience and group membership. So people who aren't going to run into each other naturally, right? And who've lived in the same town for years and have never known one another, to make those relationships grow. The third thing, to gain skills and respectful dialogue. In other words, to build the capacity to disagree while maintaining trust and social cohesion. These are skills that we're actually, for the most part, not taught in school or even in our families lately, and we need them more than ever. So in our view, we don't need to agree on politics or policies to be resilient in Needham or in the network, but we do need to align in the way we think about the health of our community and find ways to understand and respect each other when we disagree. The fourth thing, to create a communications infrastructure that increases groups' awareness of all the efforts being made to increase civic trust and well-being and to decrease inequity, discrimination, or hate. So this is something that's come up again and again in our conversations with folks. And then lastly, and coming right back to the origins of all this, to establish a protocol for community response that can be drawn upon as a resource whenever local events warrant it. And there's a lot of best practices that are already being employed, even as we speak right now, to prepare for a vigil tomorrow. Oh no, it's on Wednesday, it's still Monday. But really to put these, to codify them, to allow all groups in town to weigh in on them, to have something ready that can be sent out immediately without having to wait a long time for a vote if something comes up. So to really simulate, think through, and prepare for things that would happen. So this network can be seen as a table of multipliers. It's a network of networks. And I guess the only last thing I would say is that we have a lot of interest and support from philanthropy and national community of seeing this as a resource that could be used scaled elsewhere. So we are measuring impact and we'll be evaluating pretty rigorously. And as we go along, we'll be writing this up as a case study that could become an off-the-shelf guide for other communities. That's all I got, Beth. Have I forgotten anything?
I don't know. You were very thorough. I think people may be wondering specifically who's going to be sitting at this table Thursday evening. And so we'll tell you a little bit more about that and then open up to questions. So March 3rd, Thursday, we've waited months and months. And part of what's taken the months of time is that we really felt it was critical to have this whole of society model where representation of any and every group we could imagine would be at this table. And that takes a lot of conversations. So we might have started with one person, but gone 3 or 4 down the line once we really understood people's values and availability, and really wanted the table, first of all, to be representative of our racial mix in the town, those who work and live in the town. Right now, it looks like the table will be about 40% BIPOC, 60% white, but if you take out the ex officio, mostly town officials who won't have a vote, it really flips to maybe 50-50 or maybe even more BIPOC. And that's really something that's we're valuing in this situation, and it's unusual to experience in Needham. So it's something to look forward to see what that feels like in a different power dynamic. We're trying to have representatives from town government, civic and community organizations. So everything from NDI, Needham Immigration Justice Task Force, also to identity groups, including ICON, the Indian community of Needham, which is more formally put together at this point, the Latino population in Needham, which is less formal. Some people are connected through Facebook and social media. Some people are connected just through an informal network. We want to have people who run the Needham housing projects, and we want to have someone who lives in Needham housing. So also people who are sort of experiencing life and people who are more managing that life. Certainly law enforcement, healthcare, business, faith groups. It's a lot. What am I leaving out, Nicole?
While we have about 30 people who'll be at the table, I think when we made a list of all of the sub networks that these people will liaise to, it comes out closer to 50 or even 60. So there's a broad reach in this group.
And part of the initial task will be for people to share and consider their networks and how they will be a liaison. So how will they bring information from the network back to their network, and how can that group then share and consider and send feedback back to our group to talk further about. So that community mapping is one of the first exercises, along with many other relationship building strategies, learning together, and we'll have agendas that repeat every month with different topics to some extent, so that there's some predictability and goal setting as well. So should we open up to your questions?
So, and I think, Beth, you didn't actually say a partisan lens, but that's was another criteria. of course, that was included here. Nicole, you mentioned communications, and I think communications were actually really a key driver and interest from the town side in seeing this established. As I think all of you know who sit on various committees, open meeting law says if the committee is going to make a statement, then the committee needs to post that they're going to have a meeting. They need to meet, they need to have a vote in public. They need to vote a statement in public before the statement can be made. So by being able to have this network and have the network able to act, but still include some town officials, that lets us help to ensure, for example, that we're going to get the facts right as they're understood at that moment, which wasn't always the case before with other outside groups, okay? But also we aren't going to be limited by the time that it takes for a town organization to respond and get out an official statement, despite the fact that everybody wants to make a statement. So I think there are lots of benefits to getting a group together, building some trust, and figuring out how to work across those silos.
Yeah. There is, I would add to that, Marianne, that there's a, hopefully will be a sense of safety and neutrality at this table that can't happen if it's not facilitated by a neutral party in some sense. So taking it away from the town allows for some process to happen around dynamics that happen between citizens and town, citizens and law enforcement, citizens, you know, with one another. And we look forward to having people align around common things, sit and listen to and embrace difference, and find some ways to move together to bring more peace and safety and equity to this community. That's so rich already.
I think that would be great. Any questions from the group? Liz?
So first of all, thank you so much. It's a really exciting project and obviously really needed during this just crazy time that we've been a part of. My question mainly is, you have like these really fantastic, but also really lofty and broad goals. And I'm trying to get a sense of how the organization will move towards those goals while honoring the input of this, you know, very diverse group of Needhamites, right? And I'm wondering if it's entirely possible that the group, as they come together, they may see different needs at the time. And is the idea that once this sort of primary group is in place and kind of steering the organization, that as a representative group of Needhamites, that then whatever emerges from their discussions will be the direction the organization goes into, or are you hoping to keep some of the goals that you have stated at the beginning? I hope that actually made sense.
Not only does it make sense, it actually is exactly the balance that Nicole and I have been talking about all week. So it's a great question. Nicole, do you want to respond in part, or?
Sure. I think, you know, we've always been aware that things are going to arise. Like, even who would have guessed in the last week that there would be an invasion in Ukraine, and things that you might on the surface from far away think aren't relevant to Needham are quite relevant in many ways, right? So that we've always known that whatever sort of thematic learning pieces we have come to know will be essential to this, that other things will come up and will need their space and time for discussion. And you kind of mentioned a few things that I'll try to speak to. When we say the learning element, what we mean is that in whatever our target theme was, right here, we're talking about inclusion and welcoming and equity, and how to respond to all of that or prevent the things that are not welcome here. That's for the first 2 years. And then later it might be something else, right? But we know that the first step of getting people to align around, like, what are the realities and the lived experiences of the group at this table, right? What are our opportunities and our assets and our risks in Needham? That requires its own set of like foundational themes and discussions to get everyone aligned, even to say what our risks, assets, and opportunities are. And then there's going to be part of that, you can already imagine some discussions about like diversity, equity, about the lived experiences that are here, the things that do happen or do not happen, about what we could do. I mean, things you guys have been working on for a really long time. So there will be pieces that we'll have to bring everyone on board and develop a common language around. So that's part of the learning. And then bringing in local expertise, the assets we already have here, the people who can speak to these things. We want to bring in our local people to talk to those things. That's going to take time. And then of course, there's other things that might come up where people say, we want to learn more about this, or we want to do because it's relevant to the decisions we're making. So that's the learning piece of it. But those are going to be 15-minute, like 15 to 20-minute max, like short learning, and then breakout groups for discussion, and then bringing it back to share out in the larger group. Every single meeting will involve relationship building at the beginning. This is the free-for-all fun, like connection around those shared values and the things that matter and are meaningful to all of us. And then there is the work of the network. So as we stated some very concretely, to have communications template, response protocols, criteria under which these are invoked and how they play out, who gets called, who does what, that won't always be the network. The network is going to have a program manager who will work 5 to 10 hours a week on communications. Her name is Jen James, by the way. She's fantastic. So she will be handling a lot of the communications when, and we can do a lot of the administrative pieces. So here was the draft communications that was started at the workshop. And then we introduce it in a meeting. Everybody is asked to carry back to their networks and bring back any feedback. They can weigh in between meetings, and then there will be a discussion. A lot of this work will not happen in the room. That's one of the administrative assets that we can bring to this. But you're right still that the discussions and the things that might come up that we don't see, they will take space and time, and those will be voted on. Like some of those things will be voted on. Does that kind of answer the question? It's a little roundabout. Beth, what did you have any different thoughts to that?
No, I just, in summary, I would say we are maintaining our goals and a frame, because it is true that if we sectioned off into every piece of value and important activity for every person and every network, we wouldn't ever be able to accomplish anything. So we will have people work within that framework, and then on big things and big theme changes, there'll be votes.
On that point, exactly. We've talked about, there will no doubt be stones that are unturned where we realize there's a whole world that has to be explored. And it may not be that we're the right place for that, given that we do have a structure and a concrete set of goals for this, but we have partners in the network, right? So Voices in Unity it has a liaison, and At My Neighbor's Table. And there are other groups in town that might want to then pick up those pieces. And as a network, we can support a continued discussion in certain directions. So I guess I'm just like, when I think about what this can bring to the town, I often think the value is in the network, and then the people in the network who will then say, okay, I see this, we need to do this, we're going to take it here, and we can support, we can amplify, we can all work together to make that happen.
Well, we know that there is not time allotted tonight to really talk about Nuari's work more and the places of intersectionality between the network and Nuari. It seems like it might be valuable to do that at some point. So we'd be interested, and maybe we could think about that, particularly as you're moving in certain directions, and then even considering at some point ending the task force in some way, it sounds like. So we'd love to coordinate with you.
So I think it's fair to say at this point, we're going to have to figure out whether the task force ends or whether the task force has a role that changes. And so that is under discussion about how it might evolve and what that would look like going forward. But I think it probably does make sense to connect at a future point too. Okay, well, we wish you well, all the best. Thank you for coming in so that everybody could have a preview and an understanding of where you're headed. And we definitely wish the Resilience Network all the best of success, because I think we need you to be successful for the town. So I'm grateful that you're taking up this work.
Thank you,
Thank
Mary.
you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wish the same good luck to Nuari, whatever the next transition will be.
Yep, exactly.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Vivian, now that you're fully here.
And I was multitask listening, so I apologize. I do want to say I like the phrase network within a network, networks within a network.
We've got some of that going on. That's a good thing. Kate, maybe if you could bring us back to the first item. I understand we've had one more adoption of the vision statement. Oh, we need to unmute you.
I went back to find your agenda. Yes, the Conservation Commission, and I sent that out in a series of documents. And we are also attached, there had been some votes of the particular boards that we hadn't sent you the language of. So there's a couple more. The PVBC will be taking it up again. The Personnel Board hasn't met yet. A couple of the other smaller committees haven't met. So we'll keep on that. And the goal is to get that wrapped up in the next month. And if we need to send ambassadors to meetings, which after the last meeting, I think Marian, you and Natasha went to the PVBC.
We went to PVBC, and I think maybe between Natasha and I, we can report about that, because it was an interesting experience. And I think it actually was really productive, in fact. So they haven't signed on yet, but I might let Natasha share what happened at PVBC.
I thought that was interesting for PVBC. So being on the planning board and talking to them, to the planning board about it, and understanding like this is, you know, kind of the mission and the vision. And they said, yeah, we'll adopt it. But we haven't come up with kind of actionable items. And PPBC was different in that they wanted to figure out what they could actually do about it before they signed on. So it was a completely different strategy. Which in some ways I appreciate, because it means that they want to do create that kind of accountability before they commit. Although we said to them, it's two separate things, right? It's kind of saying, yes, we would like to endorse this, and then this is how we would commit. But I do have to say, and maybe Marianne, you have a different take on it, that the fact that they're going to really invest time into it to figure out how it is that they are going to be a part of it and create accountability is also a very good thing.
I think it's an excellent thing. And I actually think it's what we want to have happen with all these committees. And I suspect that it will take more visits really to help the committees start to think about what that might be, or to engage in a specific discussion around that. We also heard some discussion that there was a concern on the part of a couple of folks in the PPBC that adopting the vision statement was political.
Mm-hmm.
But when we had that discussion, you know, I'm going to say thank you to the folks on Nuwari, because when you sit there and you say, well, let's talk about what each of these statements say. It says, we will work collaboratively and democratically toward a just, equitable, anti-racist community. Is that really political, or do you agree with that? And the answer is, oh, I actually agree with that. You know, so it was sort of an interesting discussion about, no, it's political. And then you go through each statement, they're like, all right, we have work to do. So I think that's a good thing. And I think that is actually a tribute to this group in really weighing the weight of each of those words to think about what that vision would look like in a way that everyone could participate in. As long as it took us to do that. I think it was worth every word.
Marianne, I have a question, because it almost seems like that becomes like full circle, right? If I go back to your original comment in regards to, there is a separate, at least I think there's a agreement that we're going to work towards this goal. And then as you went in front of the committee, there is a working group, probably of both Nuari and people on that committee, because I have a problem with saying, hey, this is what you should do on your committee without including those people on that committee. So is that the two-step process that we're going to work towards? Or what's the approach going forward? And how should we communicate that to these committees that haven't adopted the vision statement and guiding principles?
So I think that's a great question, Jay. They are doing that work right now on their own for a discussion. I'm going to hope to go back and listen to a future discussion, but they were pretty committed and had some good ideas about things that they were going to think about to ascertain what they could make commitments to and what that would mean for their work. But I think the very important part is, how do we cycle back to some other boards to engage in that next layer of work that is really the commitment that Nuari is interested in from accountability perspective. Kate?
So one of the things that we've been working really hard on the staff side is to set some foundational training for our leadership team, and then move, starting with some pilot projects, move into the operationalizing the vision, right? And so we've just been caught in this world where people who specialize in DEI training have more work than they could do in 10 years. So we have a couple more leads, which we're very grateful for. One of them came from the schools. We met with them today. So we're hoping to get that done, at least started this spring. Our goal, and we have received some funding in the finance committee's budget that they're bringing forward for next fiscal year starting in July. Our goal would be, the second phase would be to have that sort of foundational training with leaders of the boards and committees, and helping them think through where they might start. You know, like for PBBC, one of the easiest places to start is, where do you spend money and who gets contracts, right? That's, anybody will tell you that that's one of the first things to look for in DEI work. So, and there are some groups that it seems more obvious, and there are some groups where we may have to dig a little and help them out. So the hope would be to have a team of trainers and consultants that could help boards and committees who wanted to engage in that work, so that they're not sitting there by themselves. And we should have funding for that in the next fiscal year.
So, and I just want to mention that recommendation that training be provided to the chairs and vice chairs of boards and committees, of course, comes from our working group, okay, that met and that came up with that idea as part of our last meeting. All right, so it, gets fed into the process so that we can make it happen. So I'm grateful to the group for saying, this would really be helpful to those committees if they had, in fact, some shared understanding and shared language and shared approach, and some cross-pollination to think about ideas about what it might mean in their work, and hearing how other people are thinking about it as well, if we could create a productive environment there.
No, I think that's great. The one thing I will add, and Marianne, I'll take it from our committee since Natasha's on as well. Part of the implementation committee, what we had thought about, and Kate, I appreciate your comments on this, is perhaps having some sort of DEI person on staff. And Kate, hearing your comments in regards to the difficulties of even finding consultants or other people, trainers or things like that, do we actually feel that it's going to be a doable task for us, given the tight labor market, to find a DEI person? And if it's going to be difficult, then what's our course of action that we should start to think about now in order to get that objective kind of trained resource to help everybody out?
So essentially, the way that we're successful in local government is to demonstrate the need, and then if we need staff for it, be able to get there. So We don't have funding for staff in the next fiscal year, but I do believe, I believe we're gonna find our consultant, and the one we most recently, we've been talking to people in Texas and Illinois, but the people we're talking to today are in Newton, so this is a big step for us. You know, I really do think that a year from now, we'll be in a place to be able to say whether we think we can recommend having somebody on staff or not, or it might take 2 years, but so I haven't made any commitments to the finance committee that we're absolutely doing that. You know, that's been one of their questions for us, but I think we'll be nimble with if we can find this consultant works out. I think that would be great.
And Jay, the other thing you should know is that in consultation with the finance committee, originally we had asked for an allocation of money that could be used over 2 years for this work, and they've actually agreed that that money is going to go in the town manager's budget. So we'll have some money that in fact will be part of the budget, which is a good thing for going forward.
Thank you.
And this budget, of course, isn't approved yet, and all of that because it all has to go to town meeting in the spring. But this is what is planned in there at the
It
moment.
looks good.
We're optimistic about making this one stick. So, Natasha.
I have a question. So Jay, I wasn't here at the last meeting, even though I did go to the PPBC. Did we share what you, Marcus, and I put together?
I'm not. I don't think we did because I wasn't able to attend the last meeting either. I'm not sure if Miles sent it out, but I do still have it. So if I need to send that out, let me know.
It would be great, I think, to send it out.
Okay.
So that didn't happen, and Marcus had been late arriving, so he spoke sort of very quickly about a few things and said there was a write-up, but I don't have it. And so I think it's kind of talking off the top of his head. So it would be great to have that. Jay, if it's something you have in front of you and there's some high points that you just want to go through for people, that would actually be helpful even now, I think.
All right, let me call it up. So we were tasked with looking at how could we implement the vision. And we used a lot of the information that Kate had previously sent out in regards to the toolkits and what they were using in order to train folks within the town. And so it's really based upon a 6-step process where, one, we're looking at what are the goals and the desired results and outcome. We need to make sure that we're considering the key constituents, whether it be the community, employment, policing, housing, transportation, town and government, making sure that we have those things in mind in terms of what we're trying to do. The second step was all about data. More importantly, you know, what is the data and what does the data tell us, right? Who benefits, who didn't benefit, and really having an objective evaluation of what we're looking at. This third step was about community engagement. And are there opportunities to expand our engagement beyond our community in order to evaluate and capture best practices? The fourth step was what are strategies for advancing racial equity or mitigating unintended consequences? And I think Natasha, she probably had the best summary was, does the intention match the impact? And that was a question to which we had threw out to everybody. Step 5 is all about making sure that we're implementing and that everything is realistic, it's adequately funded, and it's staffed appropriately. And then the last step, which is step 6, is how will we ensure accountability, communication, and evaluation of the results. So the short term was really about hiring or allocating, understanding that the hiring may be a little bit more difficult, but allocating some sort of DEI or HR person as part of the town staff and ensuring that there's equity reviews are performed. We talked a lot about accountability and the fact that the accountability for each committee rests with the committee chair, but that committee chair may not be the right person to be trained or evaluated to determine what the issues are. And it's just simply because they've done the same thing over and over throughout the year. So I think that's the balance between being able to work with the DEI, trained DEI person in order to truly identify the opportunities and allow people to see that what you may have done before isn't what we should be doing now because it may not be equitable. There were also other discussions in regards to, evaluating things for completeness, making sure that there was an opportunity for feedback from an independent advisory board if there needs to be, and then holding checkpoints for accountability. So those were kind of the 6 steps that we kind of gleaned from the toolkit, and we expanded it a little bit more to kind of talk about how it applied to Needham. Natasha, did I leave out anything?
No, that was pretty thorough.
So those are my notes. Sorry, I didn't send them over, but I'll try to get them over to you quickly.
I think that would be great if we can share them at some point. But and as I was listening to that, right, your concern about training a single person, whether that's a chair or somebody from a committee, was something that the other group also shared, and their thought was, a chair and a vice chair. But at any rate, that you get like at least 2 points of contact who would be able to share an experience, talk about it together, talk about it with others, build their network, those kinds of things together. We thought were really important. So
It's great we're on the same page, though. It's amazing.
Vivian?
I was going to say that one of the things our smaller group really came up with was the idea of making sure there was a lot of cross-pollination, that the committees and boards don't act in their own silos, which is why we really emphasized groups gathering together so they could share their perspectives and lenses and do all of that. We also thought it was also very important because we had a pretty lengthy discussion about unintended consequences. And I think that the day that we had our meeting, I had listened to a report on NPR about the unintended consequences that occurred in California with the solar energy goal of having 1 million homes, incentivized to go solar. And it worked so well, they were oversubscribed and they had so much. The unintended consequences increased the energy costs for lower income families who couldn't afford to do solar at all. And so Liz was also talking about the unintended consequences about a math and science and STEM curriculum or sports focus or anything like that, which would once again mean that families who were in a position to be able to do some private outside support for their children might be putting others at a disadvantage without intending to do so, right? So I think having multiple perspectives in a room can help, because I think that, something that planning board may see may be seen very differently from, a park and rec committee or the youth commission or whatever.
Not to mention the FinCom.
Well, yes, there's that too.
So I think the question for this group then, I think Kate is hoping to get to the point where we have this relationship with a DAI trainer, because we really saw that opportunity to create a training opportunity for folks from committees, from boards and committees, as being a really important next step before we could go and engage again once they'd had a chance to talk for another layer with them about specific things that they could be accountable for. Right? Vivian or Jen or Liz, remind me, were there any other interim steps that we talked about in addition to that?
I think the only one which is on the agenda, which is having a common language and glossary. And I think Kate, regardless of who comes in to do that, we sort of talked about is train the trainer or train the framer, program. Right. That whoever comes in to do that is coordinating with the glossaries or language that is already being used by other groups in town, so that there is in fact a common starting point. It may not be completely consistent, but that there is a shared understanding.
I think thinking about the conversation that we just had too with Nicole and Beth, it would be really interesting to hear what they're starting with as two people who have done this kind of programming, in their professional and personal lives. Maybe, there's a way for us to, I'll be using kind of the same curriculum, for lack of a better word, the same kind of guideposts and language. It would seem like that would be very beneficial for us to be speaking the same and having the same expectations around these conversations.
We have Liz and then Kate, if we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to add another small, very small piece, but we had also discussed looping in Needham High School students as being more conversant in these issues, some of them, and also being a really important voice in the conversation.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Marion, that I can ask Nicole if they have a glossary, or even send her the couple that I found, and see if they have any thoughts on that.
So I think that would be good, to the extent that we could all start to share one. I think that would be effective. So part of this group has come back continuously to, we need a glossary, we need a glossary, we need a glossary. There are any number of glossaries out there, so I think picking one as a starting point is probably a good thing. And so we didn't pick one, we picked two. They actually go together because they don't seem to have a lot of overlap between the two. They're kind of complementary in the short phrases on the one pager versus the longer document. I am certain that we will find words and phrases that are not there that we think need to be added. I don't know what those are right now, but it seemed to me that it could be worthwhile. Maybe if we had a couple of people who wanted to take a look at this glossary between now and our next meeting and see if there's some, give it a look to say what's missing here that we think should be added. And the goal, I think, would be that we have something common. Maybe we can reach out and immediately with the Resilience Network and sort of share with them, or share the thinking on that. To get a common base that could be used across both. So I guess I'm kind of looking, what do people think about that?
I could certainly create it as a Word document so people could manipulate it. Those are just PDFs pulled off of other PDFs, if that would be useful for people.
I think that would be, and I'm sensitive to the fact, though, that we can't put it up in a Google Doc and everybody can go in and edit it, right? That's not something we can do, is it?
Let me think about that one.
Okay.
We don't have Google, but so
Well, I know, but
it makes life complicated, but yes.
I mean, if it's something we're able to do, I'm happy to create it into a Google Doc if you want to send me the Word and then send it to you for a Google Drive. But I just don't know with open meeting law if that's something we can collaborate on.
Let me check on that.
Format.
Yep.
And then the other piece of it is, I also think it's going to be very important to make sure the glossary includes definitional meanings or concepts with respect to any terms that we're using in the vision statement or in the guiding principles.
Yeah.
So I do think that's kind of the cross check that we need to do and run against the glossary that Kate pulled as a base. So I suspect there are some words and terms that we're going to want to add into it. And probably more as time goes by, but.
Kate, am I mistaking my memory? But when we did the workshop with Nicole, did we not have a glossary there?
I don't recall it.
Okay.
But I can look.
Okay.
I'm willing to be part of a smaller group who looks through the glossary if we're not able to, do it another way. I think this is more of a longer term idea, but I'm thinking from an educational perspective, there are specific terms around equity that we use in the schools that eventually it would be great to have the glossary reflect specifically what's happening in Needham, as opposed to sort of a more general glossary. I'm not saying we should necessarily start off with that, but if that makes sense, I think that there's terms that people will hear in various different parts of town government and within different parts of the town itself. that it would be great to have a spot where that's all captured.
I also think, sorry for interjecting, that as with any dictionary, there are often different definitions, and I don't think that we need to limit ourselves to one singular definition. I think it may also be helpful for boards and committees as they go through this process to see that there can be different meanings, but we're looking for some consistency in how they apply.
So I do think, Liz, that would be great, that part of the intent would be as people come at this work from different lenses or from different aspects of life, we'd like them to be able to find what they need to know here, if there could be a place for the work that we're doing. So. All right. So we're going to figure out, first of all, if we could somehow do this as a Google Doc or some version like that. The fallback is for a small group. Liz has offered to step forward. Jen is saying yes, she's in. Thank you, Jen.
There's got to be a Microsoft version of that Google Doc that is not as clunky as the ones I've tried. So I'll look at that.
We hope. Jay, you unmuted. Do you want to add something to this?
Well, I was going to say there's 3 words that I would think that should be in there. One is the discussion on pronouns, the identification of people on pronouns. I didn't see that. Another one, fragility, and then leaning in. Those are 3 things that I thought immediately came to mind when I read through the document.
Okay.
Kate, if you need some technical help on converting the document, let me know.
Thank you.
All righty.
And I'm happy to help Jen and Liz, though I don't know if I could take the lead on it, but I'm happy to help. So if we can't get it into a Google Doc for the entire working group, I imagine the 3 of us could create a Google Doc of our own.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's helpful to have one group start, wordsmithing it anyway. So
Good.
And I just want to add, I also think the ideas of calling in versus calling out might be really important to have in a glossary as well. And that kind of meshes with some of the work it sounds like the Resilience Network is taking on. So how do you make change? When do you call in and when do you call out?
Well, good point. All right.
Yeah, and those are all, I think those are all terms and phrases we want to use. And I think back to some of our conversations when we were developing the vision statement and the guiding principles. What do we mean by systemic racism? What do we mean by white supremacy? Do we use that term? Do we not use this other term? So Kay, maybe at a minimum, one thing we could do is ask for everybody to collectively send in the terms that they also think might need to be included.
Yep.
I think the process of making the glossary is going to be maybe even more helpful than actually ending up with the glossary.
You could be right. It'll be like coming up with a vision.
Yeah.
Oh, let's not go there.
So this is due 2023. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, you guys, give you an inch, you take a mile. Here we go. All right. Are we ready to move on from glossary? So again, I'm going to upend our agenda just for a moment. Kate sent Needham Community Ed class description out to you where they were looking to find out if Nuari would be willing to support the class around CRT and around helping to educate the community about that. That would seem to me to be up our alleyway, but I'm curious about what the group thinks. There is support, as I understand it, from other organizations in town for that particular workshop.
I met a couple weeks ago with Amy as part of the HRC. It sounds like it's really going to be a fantastic program. I mean, I think, I think she said there's going to be like 40 or so participants or slots open. So I'm guessing that might be kind of a self-selective group that's willing to go for four nights of a class, but it sounds like it's going to be really excellent. And I think that what she was looking for was just different community groups to be able to, share it and publicize it and throw their weight and their support behind it. But it's
Yeah, NDI also supports it.
And Kate, I'm presuming we could include it on the list that Katie sends out as well, once it's available for registration. Yep. Okay.
Well, you can always put it in the
Anybody-
newsletter too.
Anybody think it's not a good project? Okay, just checking. All right, we have our first community conversation tomorrow evening. And so I don't know who all is able to attend. I know that I'll be there and Jen will be there because we will be at the welcome tables. So we're going to be there early. I believe we had, I don't know, some 41 or 42 people who were pre-signed up at maybe.
It went way up after NDI sent out their blast. I think it was
Excellent,
like
thank
70.
you.
It could be 70 to 80 now.
All right, so we're looking to have a good crowd tomorrow evening, which is a wonderful thing. And I'm looking forward to the evening. The second evening is planned for the beginning of April 5th. It is expected to be about policing and the schools. I did actually speak with Beth Pinels earlier today about whether she could possibly moderate that. And she consulted her schedule and she thinks it will be possible, but she'll be back in touch, Kate, to confirm that, which was something that the subgroup had talked about when we learned Chad is available to moderate the first and the third, but he wasn't available to moderate the second. So we're going to wish him good luck with some surgery he's got scheduled for the second and recovering from that. So, but hopefully I'll see a bunch of you tomorrow night, and we hope that meeting kicks off well. There was some discussion, and we aren't going to parse through it again here, but just so that everybody knows, tomorrow night's meeting is at the CAF, which is not set up to do a live stream at the same time. In the beginning, we set it up in person because we really believed that these kinds of conversations go better when we're looking at each other in person and we see each other face to face. But there has been really a very strong request from people for a live stream component, for access for people who are not easily able to get out at night. So I do believe that the subgroup will have a conversation about whether we move the future sections over to Powers Hall, which actually wasn't available for the sessions at first. It turns out it's now available because of the change in pandemic rules. So a committee that had them all saved for Zoom is now changing, or they had them all saved so they were going to be in person, and they're now currently saying they're be by Zoom. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, but it looks like there's some other options on venue, and Powers Hall may be an option, which could be live stream. So the subgroup will have a discussion about that. We will
Marianne, is
still
tomorrow night
hope
going to be recorded?
it is being recorded so that people will be able to see it afterwards. And we will certainly say to people, it is to the extent that you are able, we would really hope that at future sessions that people will come in person and really have dialogue with their neighbors and other people who come to see the various discussions and to participate in them. Okay. All right. Any other business for tonight?
Next meeting date.
So we've been meeting approximately monthly. We would hope to stay there. And Kate, is it do you think within another month that we might have a trainer?
Yeah.
So that we could start to talk about this train the framer sort of course?
We could have a start conversation. Yeah. Maybe the 28th, a month from today.
People want to take a look at calendars? March 28th. I'm not in town.
Are you available on Zoom?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I'm at a concert in California.
Nice. April 4th?
Or March 21st in 3 weeks?
I'm worried about Kate being ready. That's my
There's
concern.
no way. I'm not even getting a proposal till the end of next week.
Got it.
Are we thinking that this train the framers training would take place this spring? Is that still what we're?
No, because I don't have the funding till July. So honestly, it's probably September at this point. If depends on what people think about training in the summer.
I think September can probably work in the sense that hopefully the committees and orgs in town will use it as a way to kick off their year, as part of their early agendas, if we can get some energy going around it with that timing.
And certainly many committees meet in August, it's just the small ones don't, so.
I'm looking for the Needham planning meetings, the next meeting. Lisa.
Oh,
Do you have them, Kate? I don't.
oh no, I was looking at the PPBC. They are the 28th. So planning is tomorrow, right?
Right.
So it's usually the first and third, but your board is meeting a lot.
I know.
So you'd be meeting the 5th, probably, which is the conversation. That's too bad.
Let me check something really quickly.
So which date are we considering? April 4th or April
4th.
5th?
April 4th.
Monday, the 4th?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe we could hold it for now. And if you wanted to meet the 21st, we could probably go over the glossary.
With people's preference.
I won't be available on the 21st, but I can do other times.
Otherwise, we hold both for the 4th if people are available on the 4th.
I'm probably not available on the 4th, but just to let you know, in case.
I'm available on the 4th. We meet on the 5th, I think, for planning. And the 15th of March.
Roman, are you?
I am available for all of those dates.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I hazard a suggestion that we schedule May as well.
So let's put a hold on the 4th and we'll see what happens with Jen's schedule. Okay. And then if we look out at May gets really complicated because of town meeting.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
The 16th would be the earliest.
To make sure we make it through town meeting first. So if we hold the 16th. I was putting a hold on my calendar, so I wasn't watching faces. Was the 16th a doable, not doable? What is it for people? So lunar eclipse on the 16th, in case you have a need to know.
I'm sorry, we just happened to pick my daughter's birthday and my son's graduation, so I'm not gonna be able to make either of those dates, but no, but I can take notes or send in my notes and talk with Liz and Vivian about the terms.
Well,
Is May 23rd better than the 16th?
that's what I was just looking at.
May or March? May?
May
all the way to
23rd,
May.
if we're trying to hold a date in May.
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, then let's hold May 23rd. And Kate, if we can get that out to
Yeah.
Marcus as well. So if the graduation is on the lunar eclipse, I hope that's something auspicious. Everybody needs everything that bodes well these days, so. Excellent. All right, then I think we are good for tonight. Any last thoughts about where we are today? Kate, one of the things I'm thinking that this group should know, the chief is coming to deliver his annual report to the select board on
March 22nd?
March 22nd. So if people want to just put a flag on that date, we'll have more clarity about what the agenda looks like specifically closer to March 22nd. But we are expecting that the analyst has been in and has been working with the data. I'll be curious to see what the report looks like. I think it will come actually forward in a draft form for people to take a look at and have some discussion about. And we look forward to seeing it then. Okay. All right. I would welcome a motion to adjourn
So moved.
and a second.
I
Second.
second.
All right. I'm going to go around my Hollywood squares here. So Jay,
Yes.
Raman,
Yes.
Vivian,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Natasha,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Thank you all. We are adjourned. Have a wonderful
you.
evening.
Thank you.
And
See
hopefully I'll
you
see most of
tomorrow,
you
hopefully.
tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.